Hey, folks, John Kelly, welcome back, Law Enforcement Life Coach, with your Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. Sitting down with Davin Cole, and not a common household name, man. On the job 33 years, had his struggles, man, and his struggles became very public. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the dark times, but more importantly, man, how he's coming out of this darkness, how he's paying it forward, some new ventures that he's involved in, and really just we're going to talk about all things, man, falling, failing, and then getting back up. I think that's probably a pretty fair assessment of Davin's life. So without further ado, man, hey, Davin Cole, good to see you, brother. I keep saying Davin, it's fucking Davin. Dave in, Dave out.
That's it. Dave in, Dave out.
Oh my God. What do you say, brother?
I say, hey, thanks for having me on the show, bro. I really appreciate it.
No, man, it's my pleasure. And so, you know, I gloss over an intro, bro. 33 years on the job, dude. You and I were running around at the same time, man. You started, I imagine, in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. I joined the sheriff's department in San Francisco in 89. And San Francisco's unique. You know, we're one city, we're one county. That's it. There's no unincorporated
No
areas.
kidding. Okay.
Yeah. So the 49 square miles, our county and our city is one and the same. There's absolutely no difference.
Oh, wow.
So our
sheriff's... I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the sheriff's department, they just cover basically your standard sheriff stuff. They cover the county jails, the general hospital, any of the kind of like a city hall. That's pretty much it. There's really no patrol division. They've kind of grown a little bit now. They do have some small areas where they'll patrol around some of the county properties, but the main patrol stuff all falls on the police department. So I worked in the sheriff's department for just over 4 years. My big brother, he was working there, so I kind of followed him there. But I grew up in San Francisco, so I really had my heart set on working for the police department, but they weren't hiring at the time. So did the sheriff's department. I'm glad I did. You get some valuable experience working in the jails. You know, you learn how to talk to people. You learn,
no doubt.
You learn some, and you learn people's backgrounds. You kind of get a different perspective of people. You don't get this idea that every criminal is a piece of garbage. You know, right. I think that helps going out on the street. You know, got in the police department in '89. You know, right when the crack wars were going, things were rocking and rolling. Right out of the academy, went to one of the busiest districts for my FTO. Funny thing is, I should have known what my career was going to be like. Day one, out of the academy, first day, show up FTO, meet my FTO. 2 hours into my shift, I got my gun pointed at a lady. I'm about to shoot her. 2 hours into my freaking shift.
There you go, man.
I'm just thinking,
welcome to the job.
Wow. Yeah, and that was kind of, you know, it was rocking and rolling for me after that. You know, busy city, busy district, finished my FTO, went to then the busiest district in the city. The height of the gang wars were going on, shootings. That's where I got my first shooting. Had a guy, a parolee at large, a PAL. Everybody had been chasing him for the last 5 days. They'd been chasing him. He'd gotten away. He was driving a 5.0, and those were big. My partner and I spotted him in the projects where he hangs out. Big car chase up on the freeway. And I remember we were in a Crown Vic, and we were going about 115, and I was topped out. I'm like,
yeah, man, I was going to say, Crown Vic doesn't have much more in it than that.
No, not with the 5.0. I'm like, he's gone. We're going to lose him. But the freeway ended. We were back on surface streets. So I was like, all right, we're on it. We got him. Anyways, short version is he ends up in this wrecking in this big dirt parking lot. We think he's going to foot bail. I jump out of my car. I'm standing by the open door of my car, ordering him to get out of his car. Man, he just guns it, goes right into me, hits me.
Holy smokes.
Pins me between my car and his car. Yeah, you know, and they always talk about, you know, auditory things that happen. I didn't see the slow-mo, but the sound. My gunshots were the smallest pops, just barely any pop at all.
Just
no recollection. Never heard
sounds.
my partner's gunshots.
Yeah,
very. My partner, I don't even remember. My partner said he started shooting as soon as the guy was coming at me. But the guy backed up, hit me again, took off. We didn't know there was another opening in the parking lot. He was gone. He didn't get caught for another 3 months after that.
Oh, wow.
But back then, got in a shooting, got back to the station, got yelled at by the sergeant for shooting at a moving vehicle, even though we were well within policy.
Right.
Had to write my own report. Nowadays, you don't write a report if you're involved in a shooting; someone else does
Right.
it for you. And back to work the next day. No debrief, no counseling, no.
No, just that's the way it was.
To this day, I don't know. Yeah, that's the way it was. I thought I was fine. I was
Right.
like, shit, I'm on probation. I got my first shooting.
Yeah, no doubt.
I guess that's it. That's how it is. I mean, the station I was at, man, they were getting into shooting probably at least once a month, if not
Right.
twice a month. So it's kind of the norm. But I realized later on what my way of handling things was I
Right.
put it in my junk drawer. You got that junk drawer at home?
Yeah, man. Of course.
Throw it in
Of
there.
course.
Never opened it up again.
Now
Never
that
really
wasn't
think
the
about it.
call you
So
got
that's what
hurt
I
on,
did from
was
there
it?
on. No, the hurting when I got hurt, that was in training. That was
Okay.
down the road. Yeah. I
Yeah.
had a couple more.
So working plainclothes gang unit with my partner, we go into this park that had a drive-by shooting the week before. Walk in, gangsters see us coming in, start yelling Jump Street. They all take off. Turn the corner, and there's one of them waiting to ambush us with a shot-off shotgun. Boom! Round goes off. Brother, I'll tell you right now, I'm a firm believer God looks out for idiots
Yeah,
and
man, right?
cops. And thank God on both of them, because somehow this fool missed us from about 15 feet away with that shotgun.
Oh, wow.
Nothing hit. We think it was loaded up with birdshot, so we think that's probably why he missed. It
Right.
just spread out so much. So kind of things just were crazy from that on.
Sure.
Again, I do what I do, bury that shit, put it in my junk box. Fast forward, the one thing I really wanted to do when I got in the K9 or got in the police department, I wanted to get in the dog unit. That's
Okay.
all I wanted to do. When before I got in the police department, I used to be a store detective at a local department store. They used to come in at night and train the dogs, and I was always like, man,
Yeah, that's some cool stuff, man.
yeah. And so our department's a waiting list. Once you get off of probation, you put your name on a waiting list. Once your name comes up, you get to go down. I was pretty lucky; it came up pretty fast, so I got it within about just about 5 years in.
Okay.
Get down to the unit. Man, I loved it. It was, to this day, that was the best time I had in the department. About 5 years in, the sergeant we had, he was our trainer. 42 years old, dies of a heart attack
Huh.
in the middle of right in the middle of training. Just
Now
drops.
you're talking about an apprehension dog now, right?
Yeah. We ran
Okay.
patrol dogs.
Right.
So all my dogs were patrol, SWAT, detection. So I always ran a dope dog. I wasn't big into the EOD dogs.
Right.
So I always chose to do the dope dog. So we lose our sergeant. That sucked. He was the trainer. So after he passed away, me and another officer, we decided to take over the training. So I took over as the lead trainer. I was in charge of buying all the dogs, selecting them, training them, bringing down the new officers, training them. So that's when things kind of took the turn for me. So I'm the trainer now. Every Wednesday is our dedicated training day.
Right.
And one evening, we're just we call it tactical obedience, because if you put tactical in front of something, it sounds really cool.
Way cooler than just regular obedience. Yeah, man.
Absolutely. No bite work involved. Just a movement thing. Just a tactical movement from position of cover to cover. And there were some things going on with the dog, and some training that was being done that I wasn't aware of. So the dog basically thought he was out to do some bite work based on the training that he'd been doing the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
Didn't see the dog coming. He comes up behind me and just wham onto my left calf.
He nukes you.
Oh yeah, big Dutch. It wasn't even a Mal. It was a Dutch Shepherd, but one of these Dutchies.
Dude, I worked at Dutch for 7 years. Carlo. Yeah. The best of both worlds. The the German Shepherd smarts with the Mali, you know, nuttiness, and it's a great combination. So a Dutch comes up behind you and has lunch.
Yeah, he opted for the other white meat
Oh
right
my
into that
God.
leg. B leaves a golf ball size hole on one side of the calf and about a peanut size hole on the other one.
Right.
Off to the hospital. Everyone's freaking out. They're yelling. One guy's trying to cut my pants off. I'm like, whoa, no, we're
Yeah.
not cutting pants off.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just,
This isn't a trauma alert, man. Just, get me going.
yeah, yeah. They're calling ambulance. I'm like, I don't know. I don't want an ambulance. Just load me up. Let's just go get to the hospital. They do what they do. It's a bad wound. You
Sure.
can see my
No.
calf muscle.
Yeah, it's
You look,
bad, and you got a lot of bacteria in there, man. They got to
yeah.
flush that really well.
Oh yeah. They clean it. They numb it. They put one stitch on it. Send me home with some antibiotics, some pain meds. 4 days later, my leg swells up like an elephant, and I'm back
Oh
in the
shit.
hospital.
Yeah, man.
And so they're like, "Oh, this is bad." So they admit me to the hospital. I'm there for about 7 days. I remember about the fourth day in, the doctor's like, "Wow, you don't have MRSA, but we're really having a hard time getting this infection to go away." So I'm like, "Oh, I'm not going to lose my leg, am I?" The doctor looks at me and he's like, "Well, let's not discuss that right now."
Yeah, wrong answer.
Yeah, that's not what I was hoping to hear. I wanted a firm no.
Yeah,
No, you're
yeah.
not
Oh,
going to lose your leg.
absolutely not, David. No, absolutely
Yeah,
not.
you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But the infection clears up. They send me home. I'm out on disability for a couple months. I come back light duty. Meanwhile, this is back in the day. They gave you the pain meds like it was Pez candy, no
Yeah.
problem. As much as you want, as much as you needed. And I was in legit pain. I mean, that leg hurt.
Yeah, I bet.
It,
I bet.
it hurt a lot. It hit a nerve bundle on one side of the leg, so it was a constant chronic pain. And I remember about 8 months, yeah, no, probably about 4 months into it, I'm calling for a refill, and I'm like, hey, doc, why is it still hurting so much? It's been like 4 months. And he's like, hey, that was a bad bite, because it's going to be maybe a year before you see some relief from the pain. So, I was a little slap in the face. I was like, man, another year. This is okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'll deal with it. So eventually they clear me to go back to work, still on the pain meds. Our rules are 8 hours before your shift. And I stuck to that.
Right.
And that was the thing. That was throughout. Once I got into my addiction, I never used it to work. I had this, I've talked to several other cops, I have this moral thing. I won't use it at work. I mean,
Right.
maybe a drug addict. I won't use it at work. But nonetheless, I go back to work, still got the pain, seen a pain manager. I'm about 2 years into it. Luckily, I got a pain manager at the Stanford Hospital because I live right by Stanford Hospital.
Okay.
Seen a neurologist there. And yeah, it's about 2.5 years in. I've still got the pain. So I asked this neurologist, I'm like, hey, doc, what's my long-term prognosis with this? And he looks at me straight in the eye and he goes, listen, he goes, this may be as good as it gets for you.
Wow, with that nerve pain, it was something.
Yeah. And hey, and I'm not ashamed to admit, John, I sat in my car for the next 10 minutes in tears.
Yeah.
I was like, I cannot believe this is going to be my pain level for the rest of my life. It was a shock, and my pain manager saw it and she called me back in and had me see a psychologist, a pain psychologist. And, he walked me through, they go through the whole quality of life and what can you do, what can't you do. And,
right.
He got me through it and I got over the hump and she was like, hey, I'm not giving up on you. I'm going to keep looking around to see if anybody could fix this. And eventually they did.
Right.
They got me into a surgeon, got in there. Basically what happened was that scar tissue had wrapped around the nerves.
Okay.
And they don't like to screw with that because if they cut open your leg again, they're going to create more scar tissue.
Right.
And so they're really hesitant to go in because they don't know if that new scar tissue is actually going to be worse than the scar tissue they're cleaning
right.
out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but these doctors had come up with a way of doing the surgery where they minimize the growth of the new scar tissue, and they thought I was a good candidate, and so they went in. I'll tell you, brother, at the time they knocked out 90% of the pain.
That's
and
awesome.
I was ecstatic. I was
Right.
so happy. So my pain manager's like, okay, this is great, but we're going to spend a month weaning you off because we can't, for obvious reasons. At that
Yeah,
point,
you've been on pain meds for what, 2.5 years?
At that point, it was 3.5 years.
3.5
and
years.
I was
yeah.
taking 8 to 12 Norco a day, which is Norco's right in between Vicodin and Oxys.
Okay, so it's a scheduled class 3 narcotic.
Yeah, it's an opioid. It's 10 milligrams of hydrocodone, and then 300 milligrams acetaminophen.
Okay.
And so I was taking 8 to 12 of those a day. So she started weaning me down, and I was down to like 1 or 2 a day. Man, I started feeding. I started realizing, man, I know this isn't enough. I want to go back. And it was right about that time that workers' comp is like, okay, you're good. We're closing your case. We're going to pay you out, and you're done seeing that pain manager, and everything's getting transferred back to your family doctor. So I have a really good relationship with my family doctor. So as soon as I go back to him, he goes, oh, okay, hey, how's the leg going? I go, oh, they went in there, they tried to fix it. The pain's it's still there. Oh, okay. What do they have you on? I go, oh, 8 a day. Oh, okay. And I'm right back to 8 a day.
Oof.
And that's where I went right back up to it. And that's where I stayed. And I was addicted. And I knew I was addicted, but I had convinced myself enough that, well, wait a minute. When I go on vacation, the pain comes back. And it did. If we went on a vacation, I walked a lot, the pain would come back with a viciousness. So I needed it. I convinced myself, I can't stop taking it. I always have to have it because the pain does come back. So I was justifying it in my head.
But in all actuality, your pain after that second procedure had been reduced significantly.
Oh yeah, it was not a daily pain.
Yeah,
without a doubt, man. There was no daily pain. The pain would only come back if I really exerted myself on that leg. Like I said, going on too long of a hike or trying to push myself too hard.
Sure.
In the interim, I get promoted to sergeant. I leave the K9 unit. At this point, I start adding alcohol to it because as the law started to change.
Well, why not? Why not?
Well, yeah, God, nothing's better than Vicodin and
oh
vodka.
My God, man!
The double D's. Come on.
Yeah, bro.
But then it used to be my doctor would give me a refill 10 days in advance. So even if I was going overboard, which I usually was, I got the refill in time that it didn't matter.
Right. You had overlapping coverage with your medicine.
Mm-hmm. But as the as more attention got focused on the opioid addictions and the overprescription, the law started to change. And then it went down to you can only get it 1 week or 5 days in advance. Then it went down to 3 days. Then it went to you could only get your refill the day before you ran out.
Yeah.
And that's when I started having trouble. That's when things were getting dicey for me. That's
Hey, David, how long now at this point from the injury to the initial prescription until this new law is taking effect where they're not allowing you to refill except for the day before?
It's about 8 years.
Holy smokes, bro.
So I'm about 8 years into it.
Yeah.
But my mom was on high doses of opioids for some other injuries, and she takes care of her baby boy, and she had no problem. Yeah, you could have some, and it was like that. And other cops like, oh, I hate my Vicodin. It makes me sick.
I feel like I got spiders on me. All right, let me take it off your hands. Yeah.
There's always somebody you run into that you could just, casual conversation.
And then people think that they're helping, right?
They do.
Hey, you're in pain. How many times have you been out somewhere? I got a splitting headache, right? And like total strangers will go, oh, I got some, Advil. I got Tylenol. I got, we don't want to see people in pain.
No. And you don't think anybody's abusing it. You're just thinking you're helping somebody out.
No, certainly not a police officer.
No. Yeah. And so it was easy until it wasn't, then, they start cutting back on everyone else. And, my mom's prescription started getting cut back and I started drinking more. And then the depression came in because now I'm 9 years into it, and I know I'm in a bad place.
Right.
I know this addiction has me 100%,
Did
and I don't know how to
anybody,
get out.
hey, David, did anybody in your circle, brother? No,
My
because like
wife,
my buddies knew that my struggles, Um, and usually there's always a couple people that have an idea, right?
you know, I was a night drinker,
Okay.
and so only my wife knew.
Okay.
Stupid me, I thought my daughters didn't know, but they knew.
Yeah.
And they're 26 or 17 now.
Right.
But from probably 3 years ago, maybe four, but definitely 3 years ago, up to about a year before I was arrested, they knew. I
Yeah.
didn't find this out until afterwards, but
Right.
um, my wife knew about the alcohol. I hid the pills pretty good. Every once in a blue moon, she'd find a prescription. I'd be like, "Oh yeah, like last month, my leg was really bothering me, so I just asked the doctor to give me some." And
Right.
she was suspicious, but I gaslighted her a lot. That's what we do.
Right.
But it worked. That's the one thing. I had, by now I'm the lieutenant in charge of our homeless outreach unit and our drug deflection program.
Yeah, there you go,
Which
man. We're like putting the fox in charge of the hen house, right?
right, and
Holy smokes.
that ate at me, brother. You had a guest on Eric Hofstein. We worked really
Yeah,
close
man.
together.
You and
He
Eric. Okay, Eric's a good egg, man. I love Eric.
he's a great guy, but that that would eat at me. I'd go to work and I'd talk people into our deflection program, and I'd go home and look at myself in the mirror and be like, wow, you can help all these people,
Yeah, man.
and you can't help yourself.
Fucking looking back at that guy in the mirror, that's a fucking tough assessment, bro.
It ate at me. It just made me feel worse. It made my depression worse. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you something. I love my department. I loved working for San Francisco. Anybody could say anything bad about their department, and anybody could
Sure.
say anything great about them. No matter where you are, there's good and bad. But I'll
100%.
say the one thing that SFPD does right is our employee assistance program. We call it our behavior science unit.
Sure.
I would say we're easily the most robust employee assistance program out there. We really are. I could have, during my whole addiction, during the last 10 years,
Yeah.
I could have called at any time, 24 hours a day. There's a 24-hour phone. I could have called and said, listen,
Yeah.
I need help. They would have been there the next morning. They would have drove me up to a 30-day program. No questions asked.
Yeah.
My department would have just said, hey, whatever he's there for, we don't want to know.
He's on leave. Yeah.
He's on leave, paid family leave, 30 days. He comes back as long as he's good. There's no punitive actions. There's nothing happens to you. But I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I could never reach out for that help, And so I keep going. Now I'm getting into my
David. Let me cut you off.
No,
obviously this is hindsight now. You looking back. When you were in the middle of it, were you at a place where you believed you needed help?
Oh, I knew I needed help.
Okay.
The absolute last 3 years, I knew I needed help. The last year, it was to the point where I felt like my only way out was suicide.
Right. Let me ask you another thing. That all these questions are popping in my head, bro. Because a lot of times the argument, right, that we get from our brothers and sisters is that, well, the agency, they're going to cut me off at the knees. They're going to treat me like a liability. They don't have an EAP or behavioral health unit like the one you're describing that gets it, that you're human and fucking sometimes shit gets sideways. And so if you knowing that, like about your agents, a lot of agencies can be vindictive, and it makes sense why guys don't raise their hand, or when guys know that they're struggling, they don't get help because they know that they're going to be put in timeout and they're going to be treated like a liability. It doesn't sound like that was the culture of that organization. So my question is, you knowing that, like real time, that they would have been there to support you. What do you think was going on in your head to keep you from reaching out? Because, like, listen, if they're not going to be supportive, I ain't calling. But
Right.
you kind of like, well, they're pretty squared away. What was that hurdle, man, that you just couldn't get over? Because that's the argument, right? Everybody says, well, I didn't call because they're going to come after me. All right. They're not coming after you. All they want to do is help you. So why still didn't you call?
I don't know. I really don't know. I've thought about that 1,000 times. I've talked about it with my rehab counselors. I've talked
Right.
about it with my therapist, and everybody just comes back to that's the addictive brain.
Okay.
You know, there's not a lot of rhyme or reason to it. I mean, at the time I was on the promotional list for lieutenant, so part of me was telling myself, even though I knew it wasn't going to be an issue, I kept
Right.
telling myself, oh, when the permanent promotion comes through, because I was an acting lieutenant, right?
Okay. Yeah.
For almost 3 years. So when the permanent position comes through, I'll go get help.
Kind of always moving the goal line. Always moving the
Yes.
goal line. When this happens, that's when I'll get help. When this happens, that's when I'll get help. I got you. That makes more sense.
But I will tell you one thing, though, I have realized, and this is part of my advocacy, and we'll talk about it later, is that
Yeah.
I never fully understood what sobriety looked like,
Right.
and I never fully understood what treatment looked like. It's, and I don't think it's, a lot of times when people talk about sobriety,
Right.
I don't think they paint a really clear picture of what that looks like. And we'll get to that later.
Sure.
Talk,
Absolutely.
but I look back and I go, and maybe it's just hindsight again, but I have looked back and go, maybe if I had a better, clearer picture that recovery wasn't going to be as big of a struggle as I thought it was. Because I was scared about I'll tell you one thing, I was scared about the withdrawals, going through withdrawals in recovery. Because that and that kind of led up to my big crash. I had gone through withdrawals. I had run out.
Right.
And it's a horrible feeling to go through withdrawals on opioids. It's a horrible feeling. And how do I had to play it off. Oh, I'm just sick, honey. I must have the flu. And meanwhile, I know exactly what's going on.
You know exactly what's going on inside.
And I know all I have to do is take one pill and everything's back to normal and I'm good again.
Right.
And that's the worst feeling, knowing that prescription ain't coming through for another 24, 48 hours.
Right.
So I'm just gonna have to lay here and be sick, you know?
What
so that part did play into it, was the withdrawal.
I got you. And you had mentioned right up until the point you got arrested and I cut you off.
Yeah.
Go ahead, finish that thought, brother.
Yeah. So it's getting harder and harder. It was getting harder to maintain. They talk about being a functioning addict. And I think that sums up 90% of police officers and first responders. We're functioning addicts for the most part, right? We go to work. We're fairly normal. We're bringing home a paycheck. We're, unless we're really, really bad into the addiction, we're fairly functional. It was getting harder and harder for me. I was doing a lot. I was in charge of a 42 officer unit. I had sergeants under me. I had civilians under me. I was running this brand new homeless outreach unit. Well, now it was 3 years in, but that we'd never had before. I had to build it from the ground up. I was running this deflection program that we'd never started before. They decided, we had 2 port officers that patrolled our port properties. Saying, well, let's throw them under him. And then all of a sudden I'm in charge of ironically, they put our vicious and dangerous dog unit under me.
Oh, you've got firsthand experience. Why not?
Right. So, I had a lot going on. And,
yeah, man.
And I was never, my main reason for promoting up is because I was nearing the end of my career, and I wanted to finally be in a position where I had some more influence on the younger cops.
Right.
One of my friends said it the best. He goes, always leave wherever you were better than when you got there.
Right.
And I always believed in that. And so I did that when I was in the dog unit. I wanted to make sure it was more of a top-notch unit. I tried to do that as a sergeant, and then they paid me the lieutenant down. That's what I wanted to do. And so that's what I was trying to promote up. I wasn't trying to be a company guy. I had no plans of promoting up. I was starting to think about, well, maybe, captain, maybe, because the boosted pay for our department. It's a 42 grand bump from lieutenant to captain. So it's like, it's a nice little extra additive to your
Sure.
retirement check. So why not? But it wasn't, I wasn't trying to move up, but I did have thoughts of, hey, when I retire, a lieutenant at San Francisco Police Department, I could come to some smaller agency down by where I live, slide in as an assistant chief or something,
Sure.
and do 5 years, because we have our own in-house retirement system in the city. So we could piggyback onto the state retirement system in another department.
Okay.
But
Okay.
on that, but the position I had been in did give me a lot of respect from the command staff. I was also working with City Hall and the Board of Supervisors directly. That, I think, in a way, helped me out after my arrest.
Yeah,
you
you're
know?
getting a lot of FaceTime with people.
Yeah, and so a lot of people didn't want to see me fail, didn't want to see
Good.
me crash that hard. So now we're about 2 months out before my arrest, and I'm planning my suicide. I'm really thinking about it. I'm like, I can't get out of this. I can't
Right.
ask for help. I'm too weak to ask for help. And the only two things that stop me is my family. You know, I've been married to my wife coming up now on 28 years.
That's awesome, man.
And my daughters, and then my faith. You know, my faith in God. I still consider myself a Catholic. You know, and it's not in our faith to commit suicide. But I couldn't leave my daughters like that. I know that the children of parents that commit suicide have a much higher rate of suicide, and
Yeah, if you thought you were fucking her up with your addiction, you'd really fuck her up, man, if you left this world.
Yeah. But then I thought, well, I won't make it look like a suicide. There's a famous area here called Devil's Slide where cars crash a lot, and you pretty much never survive. So I was thinking, well,
yeah,
if I go off the Devil's Slide, they'll just think I was drunk and crashed.
You get all the fucking bagpipes and all that bullshit still, and
you
maintain some sense of honor, right?
Yeah. And so, there was nights where, I was laying in bed drunk with the pills and crying, and my wife would come in. She was like, "Are you okay?" And that's when I would let out about things that happened in my career. She said I would talk about things that I wouldn't even remember the next morning, and incidents that I didn't even remember in my career. And she'd be like, "Yeah, you were talking about this last night, and you're talking about this little girl." And it's like, really? I kind of remember that incident, but I don't remember it being stuck in my head.
Right. There's that box, man, that box of shit.
Yeah. That junk drawer was overflowing.
Right.
And the alcohol was pulling it out. And so fast forward to November of 2021, I'm running low. We got a family vacation coming up. We're supposed to be flying down to Mexico for a family wedding. I'm down to my last pill, and I'm a little bit over a week out from a refill, and mom doesn't have any to give to her baby boy. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I leave to Mexico in 2 days. I have no more pills. I might be dope sick on my flight down to Mexico. Didn't even think, everyone's like, you can get Vicodin over the counter in Mexico, no problem. That's not where my head is. And I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I should just go rob a pharmacy.
Yeah. You literally started panicking at that point. Like, what do I do?
I couldn't. There was no rational thinking. The worst, if you were going to plan the worst way to rob a pharmacy, that's exactly what I did.
Oh, my God.
Parked my car in a parking lot across the street from the strip mall in the city where I live, a mile from where I live.
Yeah.
At the pharmacy where I've gotten my prescription filled before. Put on this stupid mask and walked in there and gave them a note. Brought a gun with me because I told myself, all right, if the cops do show up, I'm going to kill myself. So I'm not going to put myself through getting arrested and my wife and kids through that.
Right.
Give them a note. I see them calling the police. I see
the
pharmacist.
Like, hey, Davin.
No.
they're like, hey, Davin, what's with the mask?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
You want 9 bottles today? Your refill's not for a week.
Oh, my God, bro.
But I see the pharmacist on the phone. And I see her looking at me and talking, giving them my description. And I just sit there.
Yeah,
I
man.
sit there. They load me up with 9 bottles of
Right.
Norco, 9 bottles.
Okay.
I walk out the store. I start jogging to my car, and there's the police department waiting for me.
Bro.
For a brief second, I start to run, and I just stop. I lay down. As soon as they cuff me, I look up at the sergeant. I go, "Hey, I'm an off-duty cop."
Yeah.
And then I just fall apart.
Yeah, man.
And I'm
Dude,
done after that.
You listen, I'm not a crime analyst. I have no psych 101 skills. That was you just wanting to get caught. That was you asking for help in the most effed up way possible. If you had planned this more meticulously, you would have gotten away. But I don't think you wanted to. I think you were looking for a way to stop the madness. And as fucked up as it is, this was the way. Nobody got hurt, thank God. But you got proned out, and this was going to be the end of this addiction, whether you liked it or not.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the general consensus: was you wanted to get arrested.
Yeah, bro.
You there was only 2 ways out: death or arrest.
Right.
And you chose arrest.
Dude, this is like a happy. Listen, this is going to sound fucked up to the listener. This is like, I'm elated. This is like the best possible outcome for you.
John, that was the best thing that could ever have happened to me. I've since, just recently, actually, I was at my daughter cheers at her high school, and the officer who arrested me was at the football game.
Ooh.
And we hadn't seen each other since the arrest. And
how long did that hug last, brother?
Dude, it lasted a while. He was so happy to see me.
Fucking powerful, bro.
And I couldn't stop thanking him. I told him, I go, "You have no idea. You saved my life that night."
Dude,
I go, "You
powerful,
absolutely
man.
saved my life." And prior to that, about 2 months ago, I ran into a captain from the department. They've invited me to come give a talk to their department.
Yeah, dude, you were a fucking superstar. Listen, this is a situation that creeps up on you, and then you get to a point where you're looking around years later, going, "How the hell did I get here?"
Yeah. Oh, I've done so much soul searching,
dude.
So much, but I'm glad. But it did. It needed to happen. It's, I can sit back and say, "Damn, I wish that didn't happen. I wish I made a different choice that day." But I know this, like you said, if I'd gotten away,
dude, this is what saved you. This is what saved you. You cease to exist if you don't get arrested that day.
Yeah. I think the guilt would have consumed me. I think my addiction would have gotten way worse.
Right.
I think I probably would have ended up overdosing with that many pills.
Well, yeah, no, it was not going to end well, bro. It was not going to end well. So you get pinched. You get pinched.
Yep.
And listen, we can, in hindsight, we can say that it was the best day of your life. Right? Because we have the luxury of hindsight. I got to imagine being proned out and getting locked up at the time you were not feeling like, "Oh, thank you, this is the best thing that's ever happened." Right.
Oh, no.
Right.
No,
right.
They take me to the station. Yeah, hey, no shame. I'm bawling in the corner like a baby.
Of course.
Just bawling. And I'm like, what have I done? What's going to happen to me? I don't know anything. They booked me into the county jail twice. Well, kind of rolling back a little bit. So I talked to a couple of the officers that I already knew from the police department in my town. They said that I had actually reached for my gun twice. They didn't know I had a gun on me.
Okay.
But when they reviewed the body worn camera, they said that I had reached for it twice. I don't remember reaching for it. But again, I go back to God protects cops.
Yeah,
and
man.
dummies.
Listen, thank God. Listen, you going for that gun and you weren't going to shoot them, man. But they sure as shit would have shot you.
Yeah.
And so that didn't play out, man.
No.
It could not have worked out any better, man. It really couldn't have. As fucked up as that sounds.
Yeah. But I get down to the county jail. My wife She has no idea where I am for 2 hours.
Right.
She's convinced I killed myself.
Right.
She's pinging my phone. You know, we have those apps, so
Yeah.
she sees me, but she can't find me. So she's convinced I've shot myself in the car, and she's in a full on panic. They let me call her. She's confused. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And all I can tell her is I've been arrested. Why were you arrested? I can't talk. I've been arrested. She goes, what do I do? I'll call you from the jail. So I got to get bailed out. I'm sitting in the holding cell at the county jail. Take the phone cord, wrap it around my neck twice. I'm thinking, I can't go through this.
Right.
This is it. My life is over. Get a hold of myself. Again, I'm not going to do this to my family.
Right.
Get bailed out. Go home. Try as best I can to explain everything to my wife and my daughters. And here's something interesting. And apparently I did this for the next month. I was never able to tell the story in the first person for the first month. Everything was in the third person. I would actually say he went into the pharmacy and he robbed the pharmacy. I couldn't say I went into the pharmacy. And it was my therapist when I went through my first 30-day treatment that brought it up. She goes, you talk about in the third person?
Well,
no idea.
You're disassociating responsibility.
Yeah. And so I couldn't.
Right. Yeah.
And I couldn't tell my daughters that.
Wow.
So next day, and then again, this goes to show you how my department is. They came, they did the IA stuff. They came to my house. They took all my guns. They took it under, we have a red flag law. So they go, hey, you're suicidal. We're taking all your weapons.
Sure.
And I'm not a big gun guy. I don't have an array of weapons. Right. But, they took them all, suspended me without pay, took my badge. I'm not that quite. Although I will say, I had finally bought an AR the year before.
Yeah, man.
So they have all that. It's sitting down in property.
Right.
That's another story of whether I'll be able to get those back down the road. But so as you can see, I don't have much hair. They needed hair for drug samples.
Okay.
So luckily they were able to get the chin hair because the only hair left was a little bit further south. And
yeah, man. Nobody's collecting that, bro. Nobody's collecting that.
No.
That's funny.
Like I said, they warned me that they were going to come out with the news release. But the very next morning, my behavioral science unit was there, and they're like, "All right, we're taking you up to the facility." So we have up in Napa Valley. It's a nice place. 30-day inpatient treatment. It's it's for anybody, but they have what they call culturally competent first responder counselors on site. Yep. So pretty much any first responder in the San Francisco Bay Area, that's the place that they go to. It's a great place. It's beautiful. They had a bed for me waiting. I got up there.
Now you're still on are you suspended pending investigation or are you?
I'm suspended without pay.
Right.
They got it cleared by the department attorney to put me on a 30-day family leave.
Okay.
But the city attorney overruled it. So then what the department said was, okay, then let's just start his retirement day the day after his arrest. So they actually allowed me to file the paperwork. So I was arrested on the 5th. They allowed me to start my retirement paperwork on the 6th.
Okay. And they didn't go after your pension?
They did not go after my pension.
Good.
They helped me with all the paperwork.
Dude, this sounds like, listen, I mean, a lot of agencies out there, I think it sounds like they might be able to learn a little something. Listen, you weren't always a piece of shit, bro.
No.
You know what I mean? Like you had this exemplary career and then, life happened and some shit got away from you, which it happens to a lot of us. Right. Mm-hmm. Initially, it's by no fault of our own, but then there's a point where we've got to bear that and shoulder that responsibility.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Well, you asked.
But it doesn't sound like I know a lot of agencies, if a guy gets a DUI, they're throwing him away. They're terminating him. They're not even asking why, Davin. They're not even asking why, I mean, and it infuriates me because everybody has gotten behind the wheel of a car after having a couple.
Right.
And so the only difference between you and that guy is nobody pulled you over. But we're going to terminate this guy without even asking why or giving a second chance. And it sounds like, your situation's a little extreme, bro. But it's not. I didn't fall out of my chair, bro. This isn't that far out of bounds for what we see and do and experience.
Mhm. But yeah, I mean, you did bring it up, right? Why didn't, knowing that I could get help, why didn't I ask for help at some point? But that's something I learned that's difficult. And you're right. This is a tale for other departments to listen to. To have these assistance programs available. Now, has my department always treated everybody like that? No.
Right.
Has everybody always been treated the same? No. But I think that could be said for any agency.
True.
And some guys were kind of pieces of shit, and so they probably didn't deserve a better chance. And again, I'm not saying I was, God's gift to law enforcement for my agency, but I do think I had a good career. And it took me a while to accept the fact that, I'm not defined by that 15 minutes of that day.
Hey, man. Hey, say that again, brother.
I am not defined by those 15 minutes. And I refuse to be defined.
Our mistakes do not define us, man. And,
no.
and unfortunately, when we let that voice inside of us tell us that bullshit, that our mistakes define us and that our past is our present, we never grow. And so that is awesome that you realize that, man.
Oh yeah, and that's all been part of the recovery process. Is learning these little lessons. And that's part of my message now going forward, is teaching people that. Is you can't let yourself be defined by yesterday, and you can't let yourself be defined by tomorrow.
Dude, I say that in a room full of 1,000 cops, and I got guys like the light bulb comes on. Like, what the fuck have you been doing? The entirety, you've never forgive yourself. You can never move forward if you're constantly living and reminding yourself of all your failures. Remind yourself of your successes. Remind yourself of the times that you got up, not the times that you fell down.
Yeah, I recently had someone kind of, they weren't trying to confront me, but they were basically saying, how can you just look at what you did and just move on from it? I'm like, listen,
they're not good with you fucking growing and being a better version of you.
And I'm like, listen, I go, you've always got to move on. You've always got to go forward. I go, even if you're successful, you can't just stop and go, I'm successful without moving on from it. That's the whole point of life, is to go forward and not just become stagnant, not just go, I did this.
Understanding the situation and owning it is not agreeing that what happened was right or permissible.
Yeah.
Two different things. Two fucking wrong, man. Fucking wrong.
I was 100% wrong that day. I committed a crime.
Right. With that being said, I am not going to stay in that place anymore. I'm going to make a decision to forgive myself so I can grow.
Yeah, and I didn't walk away from that.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
How long did you do? You did what did you do? A year? Less than a year?
So I spent a year waiting to find out what was going to happen. And there was a lot of back and forth with my attorney, the DA's office, and the judge.
Yep.
I went into a 30-day treatment program, came out, I was still a train wreck, because I was still, my head wasn't wrapped around what I'd done. Went into a 90-day, IOP, it's intense outpatient program. So you go 3 days a week for 3 hours a day. Relapsed on the alcohol.
Okay.
Got off of that again on my own. My attorney's like, hey, the judge wants you in a year-long program. All right. So I start calling programs, but now I've been like 5 months off of the opioids and 4 months off of that one relapse. And I'm calling all these 1-year programs. They're like, yeah, you don't qualify. Now, these are for guys that are
we need you more fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah. And people who've been through them are like, that's going to set you back. Even my therapist is like, that's going to set you back.
Right.
So, I'm still having suicidal ideations. I got a grip on the addiction, but I'm still like, I robbed a pharmacy. I train wrecked the end of my career. My career was at its peak.
Lot of shame. A lot of shame.
Yes, a lot of shame. And so I get into another program, and you know what? It was nice. It was people were like, it sounds like a little bougie. It was down in Southern California. We had an acupuncturist come in once a week.
All that shit works, man. I don't know why. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I don't know why. I tell people, listen, that acupuncturist was great.
Right.
I'm a big believer in meditation. I'm a big believer in practicing gratitude and practicing mindfulness. I'm a big believer in I do binaural music.
You needed to get back to respecting you.
Yes. You know what my therapist said to me, and it was the one thing when it finally sunk in. She goes, you need to start loving Davin again. And holy cow, when it finally sunk in, I was like, dude, God, I haven't loved myself in a long time.
A lot of us haven't.
Myself.
A lot of us haven't. And a lot of us struggle with coming to grips with that, man, because that takes real work.
Yep. So fast forward, December 23rd of last year, my attorney's like, okay, the judge is going to sentence you to jail. You're going to go to county jail. And she's taking you into custody today. I'm like, 2 days before Christmas? He's like, yeah, you're going in.
Listen. Okay. All right, we're doing that. Okay.
Yeah, but even in the back of my head, I'm like, no, she's going to give me probation, because everybody in the world is going, bro, you got to have probation. Now, the county I live in, San Francisco is a very liberal area,
right?
Except for my county. My county borders San Francisco. So San Mateo County borders San Francisco County.
Right.
The car thieves will not break into cars.
Right.
In San Mateo County.
Yeah, they're going to do time for property crimes in your county. Yeah.
Yeah. But everyone's like, no. If anybody deserves probation, I'm still holding out hope.
Right.
And I walk into court, and there's 2 deputies in the back.
Yeah,
there's a sergeant in the back, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to jail today.
I can hear this one. You betrayed the public's trust, and you're getting smacked.
She wasn't too bad. She spent actually a little, I don't say inordinate amount of time, but the courtroom was packed. There was no media there. The media attention had died off. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
So I think there's one reporter there from like a small local newspaper that's in our county. My wife even agreed. She went through everything. She was, I'm not going to hammer you because you're a cop. She was, but I'm also not going to go easy on you because you're a cop. So she gave me 3 years probation, a year in the county jail. Here in our county, most counties here, you only do 50% time. So for the year, I did 6 months. I went in 2 days before Christmas. I got out on Father's Day.
Okay.
That whole 6 months is in protective custody. So I get a half an hour out of my cell each day. That was the rough part.
I bet.
Jail was the trip. That's the other lesson I learned, is I was a lot stronger than I thought I was. A lot stronger than I'd led myself to believe all these years, because I thought this is going to be the worst experience of my life. And I don't know how I'm going to get through these 6 months. It sucked. It was not fun, but I had built it up to be this tragedy of tragedies for myself, that the first 3 weeks I made it miserable on myself. Until I realized, why am I doing this to myself?
There's an opportunity here for me to grow.
Yes. I'm here for 6 months. I cannot control what I cannot control. And
God,
I reflected,
grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, brother.
Yeah. And surprisingly, everyone knew who I was. I was in my cell for 15 minutes from court, and the deputy comes in and he goes, hey, just to let you know, all the inmates know who you are.
Right.
The very next day.
I got to think, though. I mean, listen, understanding, one, it's county, which.
Yeah, it's not state. It's county.
So everybody's doing a year or less for the most part. This isn't the movies. It's not the movies.
No.
You're in protective custody, which is a good thing. And you're in there for a very human condition.
Yeah. And
Nothing that I would ever describe as despicable or,
no,
you know what I mean?
I wasn't a child molester.
No, you
I
didn't
wasn't in there
fucking,
because I
you didn't,
shot and killed someone as a cop.
no, right. No,
Yeah.
you just fucking, you struggled, man. Like every other
Yeah.
fucking human on the face of this earth, you struggled.
Yeah. I mean, my pod, I mean, we had guys waiting who were there for some, you know, we had some guys who were up there for murder. That
Right.
were
They're
waiting for their
waiting to
charges.
go. Yep.
Yeah, gang members. But our county isn't a hardcore county. You know, there's not a lot of gang violence in San
It's
Mateo
still
County.
fucking horrible, but
But yeah,
you know,
I mean, it's still no fun, and it's no
right.
fun being in a cell 23 hours a day. You
No.
go a little stir crazy. I read a lot of damn books. I wish I
I
could get
bet.
the list of the
How
books.
was your relationship with the correction personnel?
They treated me well. They treated
Okay.
me really well. I told them my story.
I would have been disappointed if they didn't, man.
Yeah. No, they're all super respectful, and right off the bat, I told them I go, hey, you guys want to know my story? I'll tell you
Yeah.
my story, because they only
Right.
knew bits and pieces from
Of
the
course.
news, and I knew that. I started that from the get go. It was in the newspaper, so I'm
Yeah.
not going to pretend like people don't know,
Sure.
and so I am very open with what happened to me. If you were a perfect stranger, I'd probably tell you my whole story.
Sure.
Because it's who it's part of who I am.
Listen,
I'm
bro,
Davin
it's
Cole.
nothing. It's nothing to be. This is going to sound fucked up. It's nothing to be ashamed about. Listen, be ashamed if you don't ever stand back up.
Yes.
Be
Right?
ashamed. Be ashamed of not growing and learning from this. That's what you should be ashamed. The
Mhm.
potential for shame could be is that you had this situation of your making, and if it's of your making, you can do something about it, and you've done that.
Yeah. And that's, the thing is, for me, I want my girls to see how their dad came back. I want them, and you know what? I'm going to tell you something that happened the other day is catching my breath here. My daughter, you retired. When you're retired, you got a lot of free time. I like to cook and stuff. And so I've been doing a lot of baking. And I'd bake some cookies and gave them to my daughter.
Isn't it? Listen, I'm going to cut you off for whatever reason. When we retire, like I like baking cookies too. It's a weird. It's like if nobody would go. You do what? Yeah, right.
Mhm.
Just go ahead. It's just there's a lot of parallels here, bro. And
oh yeah. So I'd made some banana bread chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, man.
That she took to school. Her friends, some of her cheermates were over. I'd made some puff pastry apple turnovers. And then my wife got this sourdough starter, like this 130-year-old sourdough starter. So I made this big thing of focaccia, and she brought it to her friends. And so her and her cheermates, every year they have a Friendsgiving dinner right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, man.
And so she's like, Dad, my friends all love your baking. They want to know if you could bake some of the focaccia for their thing. And bro, I just sat back and I'm like,
dude.
I know she's been proud of me this whole time, but the fact that, like, I mean, I broke down in tears. I was like,
of course.
My daughter's asking me to make bread. And so, I feel like, I'm at that point where they're seeing that dad's really done well. Dad's doing good.
Yeah. I got a saying, man, you can't have the sweet without the sour. You can't know how good you have it until you don't have it that good. And, I think we lose perspective, right, on what a bad day is, and everything's relative. But I think that, I think our life experiences, man, I think if we're smart enough to grow and learn from them, we can create a now that few could appreciate. Right, that you can really create this life of yours, that had you not done what you had done and made the decisions that who knows, you may not have this life.
Yeah, well, one of the things I've grasped onto is the Stoic philosophy of amor fati, love your fate, and it's true. I mean, that's what I've had to do this last 2 years is love my fate. Like, this happened to me. What am I going to do with it? Do I sit down and cry and just give up on life? Or do I accept it? I take it by the horns and I run with it. And I go, you know what? How can I make this a positive?
Right.
And that's been my goal.
That's been awesome, man.
And
That's
it's sure
awesome that
it
you're
hasn't
doing
been
that.
easy. I didn't stand up and go, "Yep, I'm the champ now. Look at
No,
me, I'm going." No,
of course
it's
not.
still been a struggle, and it's still going to be a little bit of a struggle. But that's it. That what part of life is not a struggle?
Anything that's worth anything is not going to come easy, man.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And so, yeah, so I did my 6 months. I got another 2 years of probation left. Thank goodness. I guess for once, I'm kind of happy with some of the liberalism in California. At the end of my probation, California has a law. If I finish my probation without any problems, I could change my plea to not guilty and my whole record gets cleaned. Now, the question I got to find out is, will I get my right to carry a firearm back? Because my department says if I do, they'll give me my CCW back and I'll be able to get all my firearms back. So that's a little thing. It's not important to me. That's more of a.
And if not, bro, you
pride.
if not, you can always ship that to me in Florida. We're pretty liberal with our gun carrying
Absolutely.
laws.
I'd be more than happy to.
I'll make some room for them on the wall. You'll have access whenever you're in Florida. How's that?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Give me another rack.
Hey, so listen, man, so you're out, you're on probation. You've got a year down of 3. And I just saw you just got a position as the executive director of law enforcement engagement at Higher Tech.
Yeah. So, I get out. I knew the one thing I knew, I got to get out there and I got to get back to my first responder community. I got to go out. I want to tell my story.
Yep.
I want to do this cautionary tale like we're doing today, like what you do. And, but I still was like, all right, but what kind of work am I going to do? I'm young. I'm only 58. I want to find some work to do.
Absolutely.
But I was like, but everything that I was qualified for, I was no longer qualified for with a felony rap sheet.
It's going to be a little, it's going to be a hard sell, man. It's going to be a hard sell. Yeah. People are forgiving, man, but not that forgiving.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say, hey, do you need a personal security for a tech executive from an ex-con who can't carry a gun? So I was just in a kind of a, what to do now. And I was the deflection and diversion programs. I was starting to look at that and some of the homeless stuff and just kind of like, what's going to happen? And just through a mutual friend, he knows my story. He does some of my finance stuff, and he's a major investor at this company, Hire. And originally, this company started out is the CEO of that company is a life coach for like top execs, NFL players, MLB. They designed this predictive analytics software for hiring to make sure it's the perfect fit for the company. He had met a retired chief from somewhere down in Dallas, and he had heard about, just what happens to police officers, and first responders and the toll it takes on them. And he was telling the chief about this software, and the chief's like, man, you know what? That could be a great tool in law enforcement and first responders. You can give these assessments periodically to see where the current mentality is and the mental health.
Right.
And man, the CEOs fell in love with it. He was like, I didn't know first responders went through this. And so they started working on it, but this chief had a bunch of pokers in the fire and he had to go. And it was right around that time he met my friend. He heard my story. I was completely open with him. Yeah. And on the spot, he goes, hey, I want to hire you right now.
Yeah.
He goes, I want to give you this job. He goes, it's a startup. He goes, I need you to advise us on how to get this rolling.
Right.
I took the assessment. And I'm like, you don't understand what kind of tool this is. I go, we give the assessment to a cop at the beginning of their career. That's it. We're going to hire you. Take this assessment. Yeah. Let's see if you're mentally fit. And we never check on you again.
Never.
And then we have these EIS systems. I'm sure you have those early intervention systems. And I don't know how
all that is just tracking use of force complaints.
Yeah, it's a arbitrary point-based system.
And guess what? When you're a canine handler, you get use of force complaints every week. So not really valid.
It isn't. It isn't a valid measurement. And it doesn't, it's more of a risk mitigation. It doesn't help the officer. It doesn't tell you anything about that individual officer. It insulates the agency
from liability.
Exactly. And that's all it is. Whereas this, it gives you everything. It tells you, listen, this is where this officer was 4 months ago, and this is where they're at now. What's happened in the last 4 months?
Yeah.
Oh shit, this officer's been to 3 critical incidents.
Yeah, so that's perfect, David.
Yeah. And I told him, I go, well, wait a minute. I go, they need to give this assessment at a new hire.
Right.
And then you give the assessment at the end of the academy, because now the chief and the sheriff or whoever can look back and go, well, wait a minute. What's happened in the academy that these guys are looking great and maybe they're looking better? Academy's doing a good job.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're not looking good. So now we need to tweak our academy. Then you carry that over into your FTO program. You carry that over into probation, and you carry that to the.
It can be used as a proactive tool to help get ahead of the slide, to keep the slide from becoming an avalanche.
And it gives the officers the accountability for themselves, because you get to sit, instead of giving an EIS that says, well, you had 5 uses of force, and you're like, yeah, Sarge, because I had 5 guys fight me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Not the
great.
measure of my mental health.
Yeah. Right. You can say, well, hey, your scores are starting to go down here. And the example that was given to me, they had a CEO that was hired by this big tech company, great pedigree, great job history, but his scores were very low in certain areas. It just didn't make sense. They brought him in, they sat him down. They're like, hey, we really want to hire you, but your assessment is showing this. Go to find out his mom had died 2 months ago. And it really was affecting him. And
you think?
Yeah. And he'd started drinking a lot. He didn't realize what was going on with himself.
Right, man.
So with this assessment tool, they're able to help this guy.
Dude,
they still hired him.
It starts the conversation.
Yes. Wow. And so it's neither a punitive. It's not a punitive tool.
No, dude.
It's everything. So when I heard about it, I go, we've got to start taking advantage of this advanced technology that's coming out. They're starting to incorporate AI into it for some facial recognition. They have EEOC compliancy, so it takes out any biases. Right. So I was fully on board, and I was just like, who knew this? And with my background, all I got to do is go, Chief, this is my story. Maybe if I had taken this assessment, somebody could have seen what was going on and confronted him, like, something's going on. Let's talk about this.
Right. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Yeah. Dude, I'm excited for you. I'm really excited for you. Things happen for a reason, man. Things happen for a reason. And
you know what my wife says all the time, John?
What's that?
Things happen for you, not to you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's a great lens to look at life through.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, you have to look at it that way, because there's got to be a reason for it.
No doubt. No doubt.
Got a reason for all this.
Hey, I want, if you could, I'm going to put all this information in the show notes, how we can get in touch with you and how we can get more information on higher tech and what they're doing with AI and those predictive analytics. If you could, man, and I know this is a big ask, man, but if you could leave the listener, with some, dude, you and I are the same age. We've done over 30 years in law enforcement, and I think I'm doing what I'm doing now because I wish somebody was around when I was struggling to show me the way, right? If you could leave our brothers and sisters with a thought, before we wrap up, man, I know that's a big ask, but something you'd like to share with them, I'd be grateful.
Yeah. I would say this, that this is a great job and this is a great career. And it's going to take its toll on you, but never be afraid to ask for help. Never be afraid to reach out. There's always somebody there who's willing to talk to you. And if you don't need help, then make yourself available to someone else, because there's somebody else that's going to need help. And you have the power in you to offer that help to someone else. That's about it. Just be there for each other.
Brother, take care of each other. And once you get your shit together, be there for somebody else that may need some help in finding their solution, bro. Dude.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Davin, it's been a pleasure, brother. Thanks for spending the time, man.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you again for having me on your show, bro.
You're the best, brother. We'll be in touch.
All right, take care. God bless.
You too. And that's a wrap, brother, man.